our campaign, Legalize Starter Homes, has a premise that large lot sizes in Massachusetts are raising prices and making it harder to build homes that, you know, especially first-time buyers and downsizing seniors can afford. And homes that are small enough to make sense for various stages of life. So the petition language itself would broadly allow single-family homes to be built in residentially zoned areas as long as the lot has at least 5,000 square feet, at least 50 feet of land bordering the street that it faces, often called street frontage, and access to public sewer and water services. That wouldn't preclude additional regulations from being passed. We do in the petition require or, you know,
Allow.
suggest that the EOHLC, the state agency in charge of a lot of housing provisions, make special regulations to administer the bylaw. But the baseline
Well,
assumption, notwithstanding, you know, any any regulations to the contrary, is that if you meet these three parameters, you can build a single family home there. And of course, there are other regulations that could, you know, prevent that, like wetlands protections, et cetera. But this is kind of the default, going to be the default if we have our way. So of course the question I get is, Andrew, how much is 5,000 square feet? It's about the size of a professional basketball court. Okay, this is a two-scale drawing of a professional basketball court and a house in Quincy. Okay, plenty of space for a pool in the backyard, um, plenty of space for a little front yard, but it's a home lot size that's much more in line with, um, especially in an area that has land prices as steep as Massachusetts does, the ability to have starter homes. It's much more in line with that than half acre or 1 acre zoning. So I also want to take a few minutes to explain why we're doing it this way. And what I mean by that is obviously, I mean, we're housing advocates, right? This is what we do. But there are a lot of different angles on the housing crisis that we could be addressing. And we chose to go in this direction of kind of small subdivisions, starter homes, et cetera, for a few reasons. Polling precedents and papers in our kind of pithy slogan. So polling, I mean, we know from AMA and Abundant Housing Massachusetts, excuse me, and MassInc polling that a strong majority of Massachusetts voters support allowing homes in smaller lots as a reform for help solving the housing crisis. And we also know that the only angle on solving the housing crisis that tends to be more popular is actually allowing more homes near transit. But we felt that going way beyond the MBTA Communities Act would be, politically difficult, and also anything less than that would be much more less likely to have a major impact, especially if we follow the MBTA communities kind of paradigm of requiring rezonings. Precedents. Maine recently passed LD 1829, which would basically allow homes on 5,000 square foot lots in kind of designated growth areas with at least 5,000 square feet of land, which is very similar to the angle we're taking on with this petition. And the thresholds that we use in the petition language already appear in Chapter 40A, which is the State Zoning Enabling Act, in the context of kind of grandfathering in existing homes that where the kind of modern zoning would prohibit their new construction. So we're really able to position ourselves as just kind of extending those protections to cover existing homes as well. And of course, there's a rigorous 20-year long history in academia of documenting how minimum lot sizes, raise prices and reduce new home production, including in papers that are looking specifically at, Massachusetts and Greater Boston. So that goes back to 2006, Ed Glazer, Jenny Schutz, et cetera. And the literature is really rich from there. Um, So let's talk about what we need to do as a campaign to get this on the ballot. The top line numbers here are we need a little less than 75,000 signatures from registered voters in Massachusetts by November 19th, 2025. So 2.5 months. No more than a quarter of those signatures can come from a given county. So there are kind of geographic diversity requirements baked into this. Um, and if we succeed in getting those 75,000 signatures, the legislature has an opportunity to basically just pass this right away, which we do not anticipate them doing, right? Part of the reason we think that there is, a good angle for us, a good strategy for us to have a ballot petition on this in the first place is that the legislature tends to be unreliable in passing pro-housing legislation. Um, then, if the legislature doesn't approve that, we have to gather about 12,000 more signatures next spring. We have an opportunity to tweak the petition language. That'll be done with kind of a team of pro bono lawyers. No need for volunteers to worry about that. And we should know for sure whether we're on the ballot by early July 2026. And then we're trying to get this on the ballot for November 2026, same day as the governor's race. So this is what the petition forms look like for gathering signatures. Um, you'll see a lot of, uh, well, so this is the front and the back, respectively, on the left and right. Um, we really only want to write in either the signature and address boxes or the kind of town indicator at the bottom of these pages. It's really important to note that we need to turn in signature pages to only one local registrar of voters. So if you're gathering signatures for, say at Stop and Shop or Market Basket, be careful that you know where people are registered to vote. Um, but actually, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself on that. Um, Broadly speaking, our strategy for gathering signatures in this campaign revolves around kind of local election elections, primary and general elections that are taking place this fall. That's the way that you can get the most reliable certifiable signatures because if someone's showing up to a polling place in a given town or city, they're probably registered to vote in that town or city. Um, so we anticipate the kind of rate of disqualification of signatures to be much, much lower. That certainly comes with some regulations. You can't stand within 150 feet of the polling place. So there are really only a few polling places where that makes sense. Maybe the parking lot's across the street, right? Maybe there's a park between the street and the actual building, right? But more broadly, I mean, at this early stage, we're still in a phase where we want to get the word out. So any uh, effort you can make to, you know, assemble other housing advocates in your community, hold house parties, make phone calls, etc., would, I think, be a good use of volunteer time in the next couple weeks. Um, we will post kind of big signature gathering events on our website, but we also anticipate having, um, kind of big drives organized around the primaries and general elections. And in particular, November 4th is general election day this year in, I think, 55 cities and towns in Massachusetts, mostly cities. So if you're able to, devote your time that day to this campaign, that would be where I think we can make the most impact in terms of signature gathering. Um, we also want to have, a big presence in, the press, social media, that will help us attract donors and additional volunteers. So anything you're able to do to, you know, share details about the campaign on social media or, um, just within your professional network, that would be greatly appreciated. Um, so let's get into kind of the training part of the training here. I think we're making okay time, 10:20, considering we started late. Um, Yeah. First of all, I'm going to go a little out of order here, but it's helpful to gather signatures in teams of 2 volunteers per location. That'll, boost morale, make sure you can kind of share insights on how to best gather signatures um, between, um, uh, with your co-volunteer. And it'll also make it so that you can kind of better capture, pedestrians or store patrons that are walking in multiple directions, which is, it's common to have grocery stores have big sets of double doors, etc. Um, and when you're actually gathering the signatures, again, I mentioned this, it's important to maintain separate signature sheets for voters in each town. Um, any signatures from people not in the town when we submit the signature sheets to a particular registrar of voters will be thrown out. So it's important to ask signatories which city or town they live in before they sign. It's also important to make sure that the signatures are legible. And the best way to make sure of that is actually to ask folks to print their names next to the signature. That's totally allowed. Anything else besides the street address and signature itself are not required to be on the signature form. Most voters don't know which ward or precinct they're in. That's totally okay, right? And anything else, state, zip code, we don't need to put town name even besides the bottom. You're also allowed to print blank signature forms to make new ones. If you sign up to volunteer to gather signatures, I'll send you a PDF of the petition forms. Photocopies tend to be much less reliable at being certifiable because they're more, subject to smudging or very faint or indistinct language. Um, Also, when you're gathering signatures, you want to be efficient. You want to be aggressive. Usually, if you're talking to passersby on the street, you don't have a captive audience. You have maybe 10 or 15 seconds to get someone's attention, right? Don't like block their way on the sidewalk. But, when they're, 10 feet, 12 feet away, that's when you want to start talking to them, right? Be loud, be clear, smile, also be pithy, right? Um, you can't really explain the entire petition in a few seconds. So say, hey, do you want to help make housing more affordable? If so, sign a petition, things like that. Any effort you spend, arguing with someone who doesn't seem to support the petition is a waste of time. I have heard horror stories about folks trying to convince individual voters for like 30 minutes to sign the petition. It's not worth it. And the same goes for if you're trying to convince someone or talk to someone after they've signed the petition about all the anecdotes you have about how housing is expensive, right? I think it's sometimes good to make those connections, but unless, you're going to have them signing up to gather signatures themselves right away, it's usually best to say, excuse me, sir or ma'am, I'm trying to make the most of my volunteer shift here. Thank you for your efforts. Nice to meet you, but I need to move on. Um, the important kind of don'ts of signature gathering, any stray marks on the signature page besides signatures are going to be used as an excuse to throw out the entire page of signatures. That includes coffee stains, that includes testing pens, writing your name on it, anything like that. Which is also why we ask you to record no more than 5 signatures on a page, even though they have space for a couple dozen. I know it's a waste of paper, but it will really minimize the odds that we get a bunch of signatures thrown out at a time, right? Um, and when you're ready to turn in these petition forms, we would prefer to have it be a centralized effort, right? We'd prefer to have you, contact us, so that we can turn in the petition forms and keep track of the geographic diversity requirements and things like that. It's possible once you sign up, if you're collecting signatures out in Pittsfield or something, admittedly, all the committee members are based in the immediate Boston area, it's possible that we'll ask you to turn them in yourself. But we would like to kind of have the first say at exactly how that plays out, because it can be really hard to keep track of signatures after they've been turned in, and especially if someone else has the like receipt from the local registrar's office. Um, Alex, can I ask you to weigh in if there's anything else you want to say before we move on signature gathering? I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, no, you've done great, Andrew. This is you've covered quite a bit of it. One thing I will say is that it's very helpful in the signing box if you have the voter sign and print their name. I know it's a little challenging, but you can get them to do it. You just point at the first side of the box and say sign here, and then move your finger slightly over and say now print your name legibly here. The reason to do that is the town clerks have to go and check every single name against the voter file, and quite a few signatures are illegible. So we'll get many more valid certified signatures if you get the voter to print their name, even if they just do like their first initial and last name. That would be good enough. So yeah, that's a pretty key thing. And another thing that's good to know is that, luckily in Massachusetts, we actually have the right to solicit ballot initiative petitions in the common areas of privately owned shopping centers. And most grocery stores, their managers know and understand this law. So those are great venues for collecting signatures. You just go in, you talk to the manager, you let them know you're doing a ballot initiative petition. 90% of the time, they will be fine with it. And then you can just go out, be polite, stand, at least 10 feet away from the door. Don't block traffic, don't block the shopping cart guys coming in and out. But those are really good venues to collect. Typically, the best grocery stores to collect that, because they're the busiest, are market baskets. And their management is historically very friendly to us. So I would also encourage seeking out those as petitioning venues. And yeah, just be friendly, smile, be loud without yelling, and ask every single person you see to sign the petition. In Massachusetts, we have automatic voter registration. So everyone that has a state ID, unless they opted out of it, has been registered to vote, and you are re-registered to vote every time you renew a state ID. So as long as the person has a state ID, they should be a registered voter. And if they've moved since they've changed, if they're not living at the address that's on their ID, if they haven't updated their voter registration, then they're registered to vote at that old address that's on the ID. And if they have updated it, then they're registered to vote at the new address. But if anyone's like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm registered to vote, or I'm a felon, or whatever other excuse, no, if you have a state ID, you're registered to vote, unless you remember opting out of it. No one really opts out of it. So um, when you stop a voter, um, you know, make sure they're signing on the correct address on the correct sheet. But everyone should be, or almost everyone should be registered to vote.
Also, we'll provide a lot of the necessary materials when you sign up, right? Like this afternoon, I am going around, all over the state if I need to, and dropping off clipboards, pens, petition forms, all of these instructions. I'll have in a summarized, 3 or 4 page document that you can review, right? So you don't need to watch the recording again. Any kind of small sign you're able to make. I won't be providing that. It also is sometimes helpful to have a folding table. Unfortunately, we can't really provide those at a campaign level. Um, but everything else you should need to do this will be as helpful as we can be in distributing those to you in short order. And if you can't, receive the petition forms today for whatever reason, please just let me know the timing on the forms, which happy to do um, signups right now. Greg, if you could post a link in the chat, please, that'd be great. Um, I should also say we have our first signature gathering event was yesterday in Norwood. Norwood Day is kind of a street fair, family oriented. You know, we had a candy bowl and a toy train set out front. So the kids come over and then we talk to the adults about housing. This is already underway, and we will be posting very shortly all the updates on upcoming big signature drive events on our website. Gilman Square Fest in Somerville next weekend. Also, a lot of towns have kind of fall soccer leagues. That's usually a good opportunity to go out and talk to parents while they're sitting on the sidelines, right? Um, any other big events you're aware of in your town, please let us know on the forums. And Otherwise, I think we're happy to take questions. Thank you so much for your interest, folks.